The first thing I heard wasn't a scream. It was laughter. The kind of loud, uncontrollable laughter that spreads through a room before people even know why they're laughing. Then I felt cold air against my scalp. My head suddenly felt lighter. Too light. I reached up with shaking hands. Nothing. My fingers touched bare skin. My wig was gone. My brother Ethan stood 3 feet away, holding my chestnut brown hair high above his head like a hunting trophy. "Look!" he shouted, grinning so hard his face turned red. I told everyone she was hiding something. More laughter. Someone gasped. A child asked, "Mommy, why doesn't the bride have hair?" My mother's voice cut through the crowd before I could even breathe. "Oh, stop staring," she said between laughs. "The groom deserves to know he didn't marry a real woman. He married a bald ghost." The room exploded again. 130 guests. Every eye fixed on me. I wanted the marble floor beneath my feet to crack open and swallow me whole. Instead, I stood frozen in the middle of my own wedding. 3 hours earlier, I had been the happiest woman alive. The bridal suite overlooked Lake Evergreen, where sunlight danced across the water like tiny diamonds. White roses filled every corner of the room. Soft piano music floated through hidden speakers. The makeup artist smiled as she adjusted my veil. "You look stunning." I looked into the mirror. For the first time in years, I almost believed it. The wig fit perfectly. Natural waves, warm brown color. Exactly like the hair I'd lost 8 years ago. Nobody looking at me would ever know. That wasn't vanity. It was survival. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. My maid of honor, Julia, peeked inside. "You've got a minute." I smiled. "Always." She closed the door behind her. "You okay?" I nodded. "I'm just nervous." She studied me for a second. "No." "What?" "You're scared." I looked away. Julia had known me since college. She could read my face better than anyone. "I invited them," I whispered. She sighed immediately. "You still had time to uninvite them. They're my family." Julia folded her arms. "They're people you're related to." "Same thing." "No." Silence settled between us. She finally walked closer and squeezed my hand. "If Ethan starts anything." "He won't." She raised one eyebrow. "You actually believe that?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't. Not really. But I wanted to. People change. Didn't they? Growing up with Ethan meant learning that pain could become entertainment. He was 4 years older. Bigger. Louder. Meaner. If I cried, he'd laugh. If I succeeded, he'd ruin it. If I got attention, he'd find a way to steal it. Mom always called it brotherly teasing. When I was 9, Ethan cut my favorite doll's hair while I slept. Mom laughed. When I was 12, he poured paint over my science project the night before judging. Mom said boys will be boys. When I was 15, he told my first boyfriend I had bad breath and body odor. Mom said I needed thicker skin. Every excuse made him bolder. Every silence made me smaller. Dad noticed. He tried. God knows he tried. But every argument with Mom ended the same way. "You're overreacting. It's harmless. Stop making Ethan the bad guy." Eventually, Dad stopped fighting. Not because he agreed. Because he was tired. Then came the diagnosis. I was 19. Sophomore year of college. I woke up and found hair covering my pillow. At first I blamed stress. Then shampoo. Then vitamins. Within 6 weeks, half my hair was gone. Doctors. Blood tests. More doctors. Finally, alopecia universalis. An autoimmune disease. Permanent. Complete hair loss. Not just my head. Everything. Eyebrows. Eyelashes. Every strand. I remember sitting inside that sterile office staring at the doctor's lips, moving while hearing nothing. Permanent. 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 The word echoed for months. Dad hugged me that night. He cried harder than I did. Mom looked at my medical papers. Then shrugged. "Well, at least you're alive." I wanted comfort. Instead, I got comparison. It could have been cancer. It could have been worse. Hair isn't everything. No, hair isn't everything. But losing part of your identity at 19, that changes something inside you forever. Ethan reacted differently. Much differently. He laughed. Actually laughed. "You look like a peeled egg." That became my nickname. Egg. Ghost. Alien. Cue ball. Every family dinner. Every holiday. Every birthday. Always another joke. Mom never stopped him. Sometimes. She joined him. The only person who never stared at me was Noah. We met 3 years after my diagnosis. Rainy Thursday. Tiny bookstore downtown. I reached for the last mystery novel on the shelf. He reached too. Our hands bumped. You take it. No, you saw it first. You sure? I've already read it. You just lied. What? You checked the back cover upside down. I laughed. Actually laughed. First genuine laugh in weeks. He smiled. There it is. What? Your smile. You don't even know me. I know enough. He bought coffee. Then dinner. Then breakfast the next morning. 3 months later, I finally told him. I wear a wig. He blinked. Okay. I frowned. That's it. What else should I say? Aren't you shocked? No. I don't have hair. So, I'll probably never have any. He shrugged. I fell in love with your sarcasm long before your hairstyle. I cried so hard the waiter brought extra napkins. He proposed exactly 2 years later. Same bookstore. Same shelf. This time the ring was hidden inside the mystery novel. Corny. Absolutely. Perfect. Even more. The only hesitation I had was inviting my family. No one knew why. They don't deserve front row seats. They're still my family. They've hurt you your entire life. They're still my family. He kissed my forehead. I'll support whatever you choose. So I invited them. Against everyone's advice. Against my own instincts. Because somewhere deep inside, the little girl who kept hoping her family would love her was still alive. The ceremony began at 4 o'clock. Golden sunlight spilled across rows of white chairs overlooking the lake. A string quartet played softly. Everything felt peaceful, almost unreal. Guests smiled. Children chased butterflies near the garden. Even Ethan behaved. He actually hugged me. That should have terrified me. Instead, it gave me hope. Mom complimented my dress. Another miracle. Dad whispered, "You look beautiful." His eyes watered. Mine did too. Maybe today really would be different. The vows began. Noah went first. I spent years believing soulmates were fictional. Guests chuckled. Then one rainy afternoon, I met the bravest woman I'll ever know. His voice cracked. You taught me strength isn't pretending you're fearless. He looked straight into my eyes. It's choosing love anyway. I couldn't stop crying. Then it was my turn. I unfolded trembling paper. I spent years hiding. I glanced toward the guests, worrying people would only see what I'd lost. I looked back at Noah. You taught me people worth loving only notice what remains. The officiant smiled. You may exchange rings. Everything felt perfect until applause erupted. Not because we'd exchanged rings, because Ethan suddenly stood, holding a champagne glass. I'd like to make a toast. Guests smiled politely. The officiant hesitated. Noah looked confused. I felt my stomach tighten. Something wasn't right. Ethan walked toward us, slowly, still smiling. I just wanted everyone to appreciate how beautiful my little sister looks today. People nodded. He circled behind me. My heartbeat doubled, then tripled. I tried turning around. His hand landed lightly on my shoulder. So beautiful. His voice sounded almost gentle. Almost. Before I understood what was happening, his other hand grabbed the edge beneath my veil. One sharp yank. Everything happened in less than a second. The clip snapped. The veil flew sideways. My wig came off with it. I heard tiny plastic combs hitting the marble aisle. Silence. Pure silence. Cold air kissed my bare scalp. I reached upward instinctively. Too late. Ethan had already lifted the wig high above his head. "Ladies and gentlemen," he shouted. "The bride forgot something." Gasps echoed through the garden. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another guest muttered, "Is this real?" I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. My vision blurred. Then, Mom started laughing. Not nervous laughter. Real laughter. The kind that bent her forward. "Oh, Ethan." She wheezed. "You finally did it." She looked directly at Noah. Her smile disappeared. "You deserve to know before saying I do." Noah stared at her, confused. She folded her arms. "You deserve a real woman." Then she pointed at me. Not a bald ghost pretending to be someone she's not. Every sound vanished. Even the birds seemed silent. I looked at Noah, terrified. This was the moment. The one I'd feared for years. Would he look disgusted? Embarrassed? Would he step away? Would he regret everything? His expression slowly changed. Not toward me. Toward Ethan. Toward my mother. His jaw tightened. His fists clenched. He took one slow step forward. Then another. He stopped directly in front of Ethan. His voice came out calm. Too calm. So, he said quietly, "You think this is funny?" Ethan smirked. "Come on, man. You didn't know." Noah never answered. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone, looked at the screen, and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile someone makes when they've finally caught a criminal. He looked straight at my mother, then at Ethan. "You too," he said softly, "just made the biggest mistake of your lives." For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Ethan was still holding my wig above his head like he had won some sick game. My mother stood beside him with her arms folded, wearing the same smug smile she'd worn my entire childhood whenever I was the punchline. Noah looked at neither of them. He looked at me, really looked at me. His eyes moved over my bare scalp, my trembling hands, the tears I was desperately trying to hold back. Then he smiled. It wasn't pity. It wasn't surprise. It was love, the same look he'd given me every morning for the last 4 years. He took one slow step toward me, another. Then he wrapped both hands around my face. "So there you are," he whispered. I blinked. "What?" "The woman I fell in love with." A sob escaped before I could stop it. "I dash." "No." He gently shook his head. "Don't apologize." He kissed my forehead. Right there. In front of everyone. Right on my bald head. The entire garden fell silent. Someone in the front row gasped. An older woman covered her mouth. I heard a little girl whisper to her father, "She's beautiful." The father answered softly, "Yes, she is." My knees nearly gave out. Noah held me upright. Then he slowly turned around. His face changed. The kindness disappeared. Now he looked directly at Ethan. "Give me my wife's wig." Ethan laughed. "Or what?" Noah didn't answer. Instead, he unlocked his phone and pressed play on a video. At first, nobody understood what they were watching. Then Ethan's own voice filled the speakers. "You better get this from the good angle." Another voice laughed. It belonged to Ethan's friend, Brandon. "Relax. This thing's gonna go viral." The camera shook. Then Ethan spoke again. "I'm ripping that stupid wig off right after the vows." Brandon laughed. "Dude, your mom actually agreed?" "She loved the idea." Another laugh. She said, "The groom deserves to know he married a bald ghost." The entire wedding froze. Every face slowly turned toward my mother. Color drained from her cheeks. Noah paused the recording. "I received this video," he said calmly, 43 minutes before the ceremony. He looked at me. "I didn't tell you." "Why?" "Because I didn't know if it was real." He looked back at Ethan. "But I hired security anyway." Ethan's grin vanished. "What?" 2 men in black suits stepped out from the side entrance. Then 2 more. I hadn't even noticed them before. Noah nodded toward Ethan. "Escort him out." Ethan laughed nervously. "You can't be serious." One guard grabbed his arm. He jerked away. "Don't touch me." The second guard took hold of his other arm. "I'm her brother." "No," Noah replied quietly. "You're the man who assaulted my wife." The word hit like thunder. Assault. Not a prank. Not teasing. Not a joke. Assault. Guests immediately began murmuring. One woman said, "He's right." Another answered, "That wasn't funny." Phones were still recording. Only now. They weren't pointed at me. They were pointed at Ethan. He suddenly realized it too. "Stop filming." Nobody listened. He tried to hand my wig to Mom. She refused to take it. The guards pulled him toward the exit. "You people are insane," he shouted over his shoulder. "She lied to everybody." Noah answered without raising his voice. "No. She chose privacy. There's a difference." Mom finally found her voice. "Oh, for heaven's sake." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "Everyone's acting like someone died." Noah looked at her. "You laughed." "So? You laughed while your daughter was humiliated?" Mom scoffed. "I laughed because the truth came out." Dad suddenly stood. His chair scraped loudly across the stone patio. Everyone looked at him. He rarely raised his voice. In fact, I couldn't remember the last time he had. Until now. Margaret. Mom frowned. What? You need to leave. She blinked. What did you just say? I said. His voice became stronger. Leave. She laughed. You're throwing me out. I'm asking you to leave before I say something I'll regret. She stared at him in disbelief. You always choose her. Dad's face twisted. No. I failed to choose her for 28 years. The words knocked the air out of me. Dad looked at me. Tears filled his eyes. I'm sorry. 3 simple words. The 3 words I'd wanted my entire childhood. I'm sorry. Mom looked offended. You've lost your mind. Dad slowly turned toward the guests. I'm ashamed. Nobody interrupted him. My daughter spent her entire life believing she wasn't enough because I allowed this behavior. He looked directly at Ethan, who had stopped struggling. I watched my son become cruel. Then he faced Mom. And I watched my wife encourage it. Silence. If any of you wonder why my daughter kept her illness private, his voice cracked. This is why. I couldn't stop crying. Neither could Julia. She squeezed my shoulder. You hear that? I nodded. I waited my whole life. I know. One of the older guests stepped forward. Her name was Mrs. Alvarez. She had been our neighbor when I was little. She looked at Mom. I remember when your daughter lost her hair. Mom crossed her arms. So, Mrs. Alvarez's expression hardened. I also remember hearing your son call her a monster. Mom shrugged. He was a kid. Mrs. Alvarez didn't blink. You laughed then too. Another silence. Then another voice spoke up. I remember that. Mrs. Jenkins. My daughter came home crying because Ethan convinced half the school to call your girl cue ball. A man near the back nodded. I coached Little League. He bullied every child smaller than him. People began talking over each other. I remember. So do I. He always picked on her. You never stopped him. Each sentence landed like another stone. Mom's confidence started crumbling. For the first time, she wasn't controlling the story. Everyone else was. Ethan suddenly shouted, Enough! Everyone stopped. He pointed at me. She's always been dramatic. Noah folded his arms. Really? Yeah. Then explain something. He walked closer. If she's so dramatic, why did you secretly plan this for weeks? Ethan hesitated. Noah continued. You bought a hidden camera. You rehearsed the timing. You convinced your mother. You invited your friend to film. He stepped even closer. That's not spontaneous. That's obsession. Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. One of Noah's groomsmen quietly picked something up from the aisle. My wig. He carried it toward me carefully, almost respectfully. Julia took it first. You don't have to. I know. She held it in her hands. What do you want? I stared at it. For years, this wig had been my shield. Without it, I felt exposed. Small. Broken. But then I looked around. Nobody was laughing anymore. Not one person. Instead, people looked angry. At Ethan. At Mom. Not me. Noah waited patiently. You decide. I took a slow breath. Then another. Finally, I shook my head. No. Julia blinked. What? I'm not putting it back on. The words surprised even me. I'm done hiding. The breeze touched my scalp again. This time, it didn't feel cold. It felt free. The officiant quietly stepped closer. He looked at Noah, then at me. I know this is an unusual question. He smiled gently. But would you still like to get married? Everyone waited. Noah answered before I could. I've been waiting 4 years. He reached for my hand. I'm not waiting another minute. Guests laughed softly. Not cruel laughter. Warm laughter. Hopeful laughter. The officiant smiled. Then let's continue. The applause that followed felt different. Real. Earned. Not for the dress. Not for the flowers. Not for appearances. For us. We exchanged rings. My hands shook. Noah whispered. Still nervous. I feel naked. You look fearless. I don't. You do to me. The officiant pronounced us husband and wife. Noah kissed me. Long enough that everyone cheered. When we finally pulled apart, I heard clapping. Not polite clapping. Standing ovation. Every guest. Every single one. Except 2 people. Mom. And Ethan. who were being escorted toward the parking lot. I thought it was over. I was wrong, because while everyone celebrated inside the reception hall, Ethan wasn't leaving. He stood outside the venue gates with Brandon, watching, waiting, planning. I didn't know it then, but humiliation hadn't been enough for him. He wanted revenge, and before the night was over, someone was going to call the police. The first dance had just ended when Noah leaned close to my ear. "You okay?" I smiled. For the first time that day, it wasn't forced. "I think so." "You sure?" I glanced around the reception hall. The chandeliers reflected off hundreds of tiny candles. The string quartet had switched to softer jazz, and guests were finally relaxing after the disaster at the ceremony. Children were chasing each other between tables. My college friends were laughing at one corner. Dad was actually smiling. It almost felt like a real wedding again. Almost. "I keep expecting something else to happen," I admitted. Noah squeezed my hand. "It won't." I wanted to believe him. I really did. Then Julia came running toward us. Her face had gone completely pale. "Noah." "What?" "They're back." My stomach dropped. "Who?" She didn't have to answer. The loud crash from outside said everything. The reception hall overlooked the lake through floor-to-ceiling glass windows. Every guest turned toward the sound. Another crash. Someone shouted outside. Then another voice screamed, "Call security!" Noah immediately moved in front of me. "Stay here. I'm coming with you." "No. I'm not hiding anymore." He looked into my eyes. For a second, he understood. He nodded. "Then stay beside me." We hurried outside together. The evening air felt colder than before. About 50 guests followed behind us. The scene in the parking lot looked unreal. Ethan had climbed onto the hood of my wedding planner's white SUV. Brandon stood beside him filming everything. My mother was yelling at the security guards. "You have no right." One guard answered calmly, "Ma'am, you were removed from private property. We're family." "No," another guest muttered behind me. "You stopped being family years ago." The moment Ethan saw me, his face lit up. "There she is." He jumped off the vehicle. "I knew you'd come." Noah stepped between us. "Leave." Ethan ignored him. Instead, he stared directly at my head. Still uncovered, still bald. "You really aren't wearing it anymore." I stayed silent. He laughed, trying to make a statement. "No." My voice surprised even me. "I'm trying to stop hiding from people like you." His smile faded slightly. "Good." Brandon kept recording. His camera pointed directly at me. Noah noticed immediately. "You need to stop filming." Brandon shrugged. "It's public." "No." The wedding planner spoke up. "This is private property." Brandon rolled his eyes. "Freedom of speech." Noah walked toward him. "Freedom of speech isn't freedom from consequences." Brandon stepped backward. "You threatening me?" "No. I'm warning you." Mom suddenly pushed past everyone. She pointed directly at me. "This is all your fault." Several guests gasped. "My fault? You embarrassed this family." I actually laughed. It wasn't happy. It wasn't angry. It was disbelief. "I embarrassed the family?" "Yes." "You made your brother look evil." "No." Mrs. Alvarez answered before I could. "He did that himself." Several guests nodded. Another woman added, "We all watched it happen." Mom spun around. "You people don't know our family." An elderly man answered quietly, "We know enough." Dad finally arrived. He had walked slower than everyone else. His heart condition made running difficult, but the expression on his face, I'd never seen it before. Not once. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't disappointment. It was resolve. "Ethan." My brother looked over. "What?" "Give me your car keys." He laughed. "Seriously? Now?" "No." Dad held out his hand. "I've paid your insurance for 9 years. So, I'm done." Ethan stared. "What?" "I'm done. You'll get over it." "No." Dad shook his head slowly. "I already have." For the first time in his life, Ethan looked uncertain. Our father had always forgiven him. Always cleaned up the mess. Always paid the bill. Not tonight. "You don't mean that." Dad looked tired. "I sold the lake cabin yesterday." "What?" "I used the money to pay off your gambling debt." Silence. Complete silence. My head snapped toward Dad. "What debt?" His eyes filled with shame. "I never told you." Mom immediately interrupted. Don't. But Dad kept going. He owes nearly $90,000. I couldn't breathe. 90,000? Dad nodded. I kept paying people so they wouldn't hurt him. Ethan exploded. I didn't ask you to tell her. No. Dad answered. You just kept asking for more money. Everything suddenly started making sense. The missing retirement savings. The second mortgage. Dad working weekends after retirement. All those unexpected expenses. It wasn't bad luck. It was Ethan. My brother had been draining our parents for years. And Mom had covered for him. You told me, I whispered to Mom, that Dad couldn't help with my medical treatments because money was tight. She looked away. I remembered every conversation, every rejected surgery, every specialist I couldn't afford, every time she'd said, we have to think about the whole family. The whole family, meaning Ethan, not me. Dad couldn't look at me. I'm sorry. How long? He swallowed. 8 years. 8 years. The exact same amount of time I'd lived with alopecia. While I was rationing medication, my brother had been gambling. While I skipped treatments, he was losing thousands in casinos. While I believed we couldn't afford specialists, Dad was secretly paying off loan sharks. I felt sick. Noah wrapped an arm around me. You don't have to do this. I do. I slowly walked toward Ethan. He looked almost bored. Done crying. No. I stopped only a few feet away. I'm done protecting you. He smirked. You can't do anything. I already have. His smile disappeared. What? I looked at Brandon. Keep recording. He frowned. What? You wanted something to go viral. I faced Ethan again. So let's make sure people hear everything. Guests instinctively stepped closer. Phones appeared again. Only this time. They weren't recording my humiliation. They were recording his confession. You stole from Dad. I borrowed. You never paid it back. So, you ruined his retirement. He'll survive. Dad closed his eyes. The words hit him harder than anyone. Noah quietly asked, Do you still have those texts? I looked at him. Yes. Months ago. Dad had accidentally forwarded me screenshots. Ethan demanding money. Threatening to disappear. Threatening to hurt himself. Calling Dad worthless if he refused. I'd never understood the full story. Now I did. Noah nodded. Show everyone. I opened my phone. My hands trembled. Then I began reading. Dad, if you don't send 5,000 tonight, they'll break my legs. Another message. Sell something. Another. I deserve my inheritance early. Then another. If you loved me, you'd help. Guests stared in horror. Someone whispered. My God. Mom lunged toward me. Give me that phone. Security immediately stepped between us. She screamed. Those messages are private. Dad answered quietly. So is our bank account. For the first time all night, Mom had nothing to say. Then Brandon made the biggest mistake of his life. Trying to defend Ethan, he laughed and said, Come on. Every family has problems. Noah looked directly at him. No. He pointed toward Brandon's camera. What you filmed today wasn't a family problem. It was evidence. Brandon blinked. What? Noah smiled. My cousin is a prosecutor. Silence. And she already has a copy of your live stream. Brandon's face drained of color. I deleted it. Noah shook his head. It already has over 30,000 views. Before anyone could speak, red and blue lights flashed across the parking lot. Police. 2 patrol cars rolled slowly into the venue. One officer stepped out, who reported an assault. Every head turned toward Noah. He raised his hand. I did. The officer nodded. Who is the victim? Noah gently took my hand. My wife. The officer looked at me kindly. Ma'am, we'd like to ask you a few questions. Ethan laughed. Seriously. The second officer looked directly at him. Sir, you're going to want to stop talking. For the first time that entire day, my brother looked genuinely afraid. And I realized something. The wedding humiliation. The family secrets. The gambling. None of it would matter as much as what the police were about to discover. Because Ethan hadn't just humiliated me. He had committed another crime. One that none of us even knew about yet. The flashing police lights painted the reception hall in alternating shades of blue and red. The music had stopped. The laughter was gone. The only sounds were the lake waves against the dock and Ethan's heavy breathing. One of the officers approached me first. "Ma'am, are you injured?" I looked at Noah. He squeezed my hand. "I'm okay," I answered quietly. The officer nodded. "I still need your statement." Before I could respond, Ethan interrupted. "This is ridiculous." The younger officer turned toward him. "Sir, I strongly suggest you remain quiet. I didn't hit her." "No," the officer replied calmly. "But intentionally removing someone's wig without consent can still be investigated as assault or battery, depending on the circumstances." For the first time that night, Ethan stopped smiling. While another officer spoke with me, Noah quietly handed over his phone. "This is the recording I received before the ceremony." The officer watched the video. His expression changed almost immediately. He replayed one section. "I'm ripping that stupid wig off right after the vows." Then Brandon's voice. "Your mom actually agreed?" Then Ethan again. "She said the groom deserves a real woman." The officer locked the phone. "Did anyone else receive this?" "No." Noah answered. "It was sent anonymously." The officer nodded thoughtfully. "We'll need a copy." Meanwhile, another officer questioned Brandon. "Is this your camera?" "Yeah. We're taking it as evidence." "You can't." "We can." Brandon looked panicked. "It belongs to me." "So does your footage." The officer extended his hand. "Camera." Reluctantly, Brandon handed it over. I watched the exchange while trying to process everything. The wedding I'd imagined for years had turned into a crime scene. Guests were whispering. Some were leaving. Others stayed because they knew something bigger was unfolding. I suddenly felt exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. 28 years of fear had caught up with me. Dad slowly walked over. "I owe you more than an apology." I looked at him. "You do." He nodded. "I know." His shoulders seemed smaller than I'd ever seen them. I thought keeping the peace was protecting everyone. He shook his head. I was protecting the wrong person. I wanted to stay angry. Part of me still was. But looking at him, I saw an old man carrying decades of guilt. I should have stopped him. Yes. I should have left years ago. Yes. I should have protected you. The tears in his eyes finally spilled over. I failed. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I stepped forward. I hugged him, not because everything was forgiven, because healing had finally started. Across the parking lot, Mom was still arguing with the officers. "This is all blown out of proportion." One officer answered, "Ma'am, we have video evidence." "It was a joke." "Your daughter doesn't appear to think so." Mom scoffed. "She's always been too sensitive." The officer looked directly at her. "I've worked crimes against domestic violence victims for 12 years. He paused. "One thing I've learned is that people who cause harm often call it a joke." Mom had no response. Just as the officers were preparing to leave, a black SUV pulled into the venue. A woman in a Navy business suit stepped out. She looked to be in her early 40s. Confident, calm, focused. She walked straight toward Noah. "You okay?" He nodded. "I'm fine." Then he turned to me. "Emily, this is my cousin." She smiled warmly. "I'm Rachel." We shook hands. "I came as fast as I could." I frowned. "You knew." "I saw the live stream." She looked toward Ethan. "And I recognized someone." Everyone looked confused, including Ethan. Rachel reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder. She opened it. Inside were several printed photographs. She held one up. It showed Ethan entering a casino with another man. The date was from 6 months earlier. Then another. A different location. Another casino. Another date. Then another photograph. This one made Ethan's face lose all color. It showed him standing beside a man I didn't recognize. Rachel looked directly at him. "Remember Victor Sloan?" Ethan's lips parted. He said nothing. Rachel continued. "I do." She turned toward us. "I'm an attorney. I represent several fraud victims." She looked back at Ethan. "Victor Sloan has been under investigation for organizing illegal gambling operations and financial scams." The air seemed to disappear from the parking lot. Dad whispered, "Oh no." Rachel nodded. "We've been trying to identify everyone connected to him." She held up another photograph. Dad slowly walked over. "I owe you more than an apology." I looked at him. "You do." He nodded. "I know." His shoulders seemed smaller than I'd ever seen them. I thought keeping the peace was protecting everyone. He shook his head. I was protecting the wrong person. I wanted to stay angry. Part of me still was. But looking at him, I saw an old man carrying decades of guilt. I should have stopped him. Yes. I should have left years ago. Yes. I should have protected you. The tears in his eyes finally spilled over. I failed. For a long moment. Neither of us spoke. Then I stepped forward. I hugged him. Not because everything was forgiven. Because healing had finally started. Across the parking lot, Mom was still arguing with the officers. This is all blown out of proportion. One officer answered, Ma'am, we have video evidence. It was a joke. Your daughter doesn't appear to think so. Mom scoffed. She's always been too sensitive. The officer looked directly at her. I've worked crimes against domestic violence victims for 12 years. He paused. One thing I've learned is that people who cause harm often call it a joke. Mom had no response. Just as the officers were preparing to leave, a black SUV pulled into the venue. A woman in a Navy business suit stepped out. She looked to be in her early 40s. Confident, calm, focused. She walked straight toward Noah. You okay? He nodded. I'm fine. Then he turned to me. Emily, this is my cousin. She smiled warmly. I'm Rachel. We shook hands. I came as fast as I could. I frowned. You knew. I saw the live stream. She looked toward Ethan. And I recognized someone. Everyone looked confused, including Ethan. Rachel reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder. She opened it. Inside were several printed photographs. She held one up. It showed Ethan entering a casino with another man. The date was from 6 months earlier. Then another. A different location. Another casino. Another date. Then another photograph. This one made Ethan's face lose all color. It showed him standing beside a man I didn't recognize. Rachel looked directly at him. Remember Victor Sloan? Ethan's lips parted. He said nothing. Rachel continued. I do. She turned toward us. I'm an attorney. I represent several fraud victims. She looked back at Ethan. Victor Sloan has been under investigation for organizing illegal gambling operations and financial scams. The air seemed to disappear from the parking lot. Dad whispered, Oh no. Rachel nodded. We've been trying to identify everyone connected to him. She held up another photograph. The brother who had spent years making me feel powerless couldn't even move his own hands. As the police escorted him toward the car, he finally looked at me. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was desperate. Emily! I said nothing. I'm sorry. Those words should have meant everything. Instead, they felt empty, because they came only after consequences arrived, not after conscience. The police cars disappeared into the night. The venue slowly emptied. Only close family and friends remained. Someone asked if we wanted to cancel everything. Noah looked at me. What do you want? I thought about it. The ruined ceremony. The humiliation. The years I'd spent hiding. Then I smiled. I still want cake. Everyone laughed. Real laughter this time. Julia wiped away tears. I knew you'd say that. An hour later, about 30 of us sat together in the reception hall. No elaborate speeches. No perfect schedule. Just people who genuinely loved us. Dad stood with a glass in his hand. I'd like one more toast. Everyone became quiet. He looked directly at me. When Emily was born, he smiled through tears. I promised I'd always protect her. His voice cracked. I broke that promise. Silence. But if she'll let me... He looked at me again. I'd like to spend the rest of my life keeping it. I stood, walked over, and hugged him again. This time, the applause wasn't for a wedding. It was for a father finally becoming one. Epilogue, 18 months later. People often ask if losing my wig at my wedding ruined the happiest day of my life. I tell them no. It revealed the truth. Sometimes those are different things. Sometimes they're the same. The criminal investigation eventually expanded. Ethan accepted a plea agreement on multiple financial offenses unrelated to the wedding, and the assault from the ceremony became part of the broader legal proceedings. Brandon cooperated with investigators, admitted he had been paid to film the humiliation, and received a lighter sentence for his cooperation. Mom refused to believe Ethan was responsible for months. She blamed me. She blamed Noah. She blamed the police. She blamed everyone except the person who had made the choices. Eventually, she found herself completely alone. For the first time in her life, no one laughed at her excuses. Dad filed for divorce. It wasn't impulsive. It came after months of counseling and reflection. He told me, I spent too many years confusing peace with silence. He moved into a small lakeside house. Every Sunday, Noah and I visit him for dinner. He never misses a week. As for me, 3 months after the wedding, I stopped wearing wigs completely. The first grocery trip felt terrifying. The second felt easier. By the 10th, I barely thought about it. Children still ask questions sometimes. Adults still stare occasionally. But now I smile and answer honestly. I'm bald. And that's enough. One afternoon, a teenage girl approached me in a bookstore. She wore a knitted beanie, even though it was warm outside. I saw your wedding video. I tensed. She smiled nervously. I have alopecia too. She slowly removed her hat. I've never done this in public before. We hugged in the middle of the bookstore. Neither of us cared who was watching. Noah still kisses my forehead every morning. Sometimes he jokes, I never have to worry about bad hair days. I roll my eyes every single time. And every single time, I laugh. The greatest revenge wasn't seeing Ethan arrested. It wasn't watching the truth come out. It wasn't proving my mother wrong. The greatest revenge was waking up one ordinary Tuesday, looking in the mirror, seeing my bare head, and realizing I finally loved the woman looking back.